lovely people. Thank you again for joining us today for this session for SprintX. And I'm here to take one more session of social studies on popular demand, and my name is Arshpreet Kaur. So today we guys are going to talk about power sharing. So I'm going to talk about some of the most important expected questions and how you're going to address those questions in your answers. So let's get started with this set. Okay, so we're going to talk about power sharing. That's a very important chapter, and yes, everybody like one toddler to a person of middle age to a person of a very old age would probably love to have some sort of power in his or her hand, and you guys would probably have that power or demonstrate your power with Clash of Clans and stuff like PUBG and all. So okay, you get points. So you like to share your opinion, your views on that. So that's what we're going to talk about in power sharing. So I'm going to relate all the events with some sort of real life stuff so that it becomes easy for you guys to memorize and retain the stuff for long. Okay, so let's get started. How we're going to go around while we are attempting the question. See guys, again I would stress on the fact that if it's a 1 mark question, please stick to the word limit of 15 to 30 words. If it's a 3 mark question, stick to the word limit of at least 80 words. And if it's a 5 mark question, respect the word limit and don't exceed onto 120 words. So what we tend to do is when we have a 5 mark question and we probably know one of the answers, like one of the questions, we don't know the other one. So what we probably do is we try to compensate the loss of what we've made in the first question, but we try to compensate in the second question. That's not going to help. Your teacher is actually going to look for the relevant information if you've written the sequence of events right. So I don't know why students have become all the more creative when it comes to answer writing. It's like I've seen students, I don't know why students suddenly they get into that Gajni mode when it comes to social studies. So the very easy go to this solution is not becoming Gajni for that matter is you don't have to, when you're reading a chapter, you anyway cannot retain the entire chapter, right? So what you can, the best practice that you guys can follow is just memorize the pointers. Just the pointers. At least if you tend to forget or you land into that mode of Gajni, right, you have something in your head, you have the pointers, and of course you can just frame a very good answer. I'm not asking you to beat around the bush if you don't know the relevant content, but at least pointers would help you reach somewhere near to the topic. So let's get started with the very first question. It is, why is it very difficult to make changes in power sharing arrangement between union government and state government? Explain with example. Now in this case they've clearly mentioned that they are expecting you to explain this scenario with the help of examples, right? So yes, you have to define what you understand by government. It's government is about how the structure, in this case you're going to mention about government like at the state level, at the center level. So they are expecting a difference. They are expecting you why we can't make changes in that particular pattern that we guys probably follow or have been following. So the panga and the basic issue related to this is there has been a very clear demarcation of all this. And that has been done rightly through our forefathers in the form of a constitution. So they've clearly mentioned they never wanted any hustle bustle. For example, you and your younger brother, it's like two of you, you've been assigned some duties, some responsibilities, and also some set of rights, right? You can't change those responsibilities, duties, and set of rights. It's only with the prior permission of your parents that you can enter into each other's domain. right? So in this case, like, your parents are acting like your Bible, like your constitution, who have probably defined your rules, your territory for that matter. Similarly, the state and the central government also have their power divided, and nothing is going to change, nothing is going to be amended unless and until you change the authority, or you bring a change in the constitution. And of course, it's going to be through the best easy feasible method. That's going to be the amendment. You basically have to amend the constitution in order to change that practice. Second important point that you have to address in this case is constitution has clearly laid down the division. So in case, like I told you, you have to change the case or the division, you have to amend the constitution. And similarly, the state government has to ensure that there is integrity, there is respect, they promote fraternity into the country. So that is why they have been given or the authority to administer the entire territory of India, so that uniform set of laws are applicable on each and every state for that matter. Whereas the smaller domains or the units, like we call in this case maybe states, maybe provinces, they have their jurisdiction limited to that particular domain. So that is the difference. Like it comes your elder brother who becomes really protective about you at times, or maybe protective about the entire family. So the center has been allocated the duty to take care of the entire family, whereas the state government can probably take care, or maybe your brother or sister if is of the middle age, can probably take care of the younger sibling for that matter. So these are the two important points that you have to clearly mention in your example. And also, if they ask you to give examples, you can quote some examples from your state list and your central list. Like the powers have been divided into three lists. The very first power is with the union list, second list is the state list, and the third list is the concurrent list. Still, you have to make a note of the point that the most important or the residuary topics, whatever is left, is automatically going to go onto the shoulders of the elder brother of the family. In this case, it's none other than the central government. I hope that point is clear, and please try to mention your points in the form of either bullet points, or you could probably number them. Okay, so let's jump on to the second question. The second question is explain. They're asking you to explain how power is shared among different organs of the government. Okay, so when they ask a question like that, so everybody kickstarts with, the power is divided into different sets, this, that. So, okay, the teacher is not expecting that from a very brilliant student. What you're going to talk about in this case, how you are supposed to, answer this to ensure that you score. If you're giving approximately 3 points, that's going to range up to 80 words. You're going to score 3 marks. So in this case, guys, please ensure first you define 3 different organs of the government. May it be legislature, may it be executive, may it be judiciary. So the very set is like that. So instead of writing it this way, that the 3 organs are legislature, executive and judiciary, I would ask you to probably make a flow chart and name it that there are 3 organs. One is the legislative organs, the second one is the judicial, and the third one is executive. So here you go with the very first opening clause. Second is, you're going to tell the horizontal distribution. This is going to be the vertical distribution of power, and then you're going to make a block diagram. Then you're going to talk, the second point is going to be about the horizontal distribution of power. So rather than writing a complete sentence and explaining it, what you're going to do is you're going to mark a central government, and below it you're going to mark all those small states and provinces, and you're going to write one statement here that the power is shared among different organs through horizontal power distribution. So in this case, you've talked about horizontal power sharing, you've talked about vertical power sharing, and finally you have to ensure that in this case we have to talk about different organs. We don't have to mention about the central and the state government for that matter. But just in case they ask how is the power divided, whatever the clause they ask you, so since we are just going to talk about the legislative, executive and judicial organs of the government, so you have to explain that your one point is about the separation of power. The second point that you're going to define is about what are the organs of the government, and third point is that this sort of distribution is actually acting as a horizontal distribution of power. So you have three keywords as of now. First is horizontal, second is three organs, and the third one is it's about the practice of separation of powers. So the separation of powers, it probably ensures and checks. For example, I just gave you the example of you and your brother sharing the same room, right? So if you guys are sharing the same room, you're in the same domain, there are chances for a head-on collision or head-on clash might occur. So in order to ensure that situation like that does not arise, the government or your parents would probably segregate you. They're going to separate your powers, that okay, this is your power, this is your power, you can use this, you can use this. Since you have ensured that there is separation of power, which would automatically mean that there is going to be a balance, it's going to maintain a balance of power, because anyway you have segregated the powers, and you're going to check that there is no there's no I would say indiscriminate use of the authority. So this point, this solution would probably come under the heading of the system of checks and balances. So why I explained all these is because it's a very, very important question. You can expect this question in 3 marks. So first you're going to talk about different organs in a block diagram or probably in a flow chart that is pretty clear to your teacher. Second, you're going to you're talking about the horizontal distribution of power. Third point is it ensures or advocates the separation of power. Let me underline it here for you guys. So these are the 3 organs. It advocates separation of power in case you're writing something like that. And the fourth point is the system of checks and balances. So guys, you've given the content, you've marked the content. If you're going to follow this pattern, please ensure that at least you underline the stuff. And if you're not writing in this way, I would really appreciate and suggest you to mention that you're going to talk about checks and balances towards the very start of the point, and then go on and on with the explanation. Okay, on that note, let's get started with the next question. It's describe any 3. Now here you go. Now they've talked about any 3 demands of Sri Lankan Tamils. How did they struggle for their demands? Okay, so this is the question, and we are expected to answer in 3 points, right? So they've clearly defined that they're looking for an answer that's going to be for 3 demands of Sri Lankan Tamils. Okay, so what pattern you guys can follow when you have to answer a situation like that? Sri Lankan Tamils, started their struggle by launching their political parties. Right? So when I say yes, they had a long struggle. In this case, what would probably add to your answer, what you guys can do is, in this case, you guys can probably draw a map of India like this and vaguely draw Sri Lanka. In this case, you're going to mark that, okay, this territory, northeast Sri Lankan territory, is being claimed by Sri Lankan Tamils. And for this, they have launched a political party that is LTTE. Now the teacher comes to know that you guys are pretty clear and aware of the fact that yes, they have been asking for for a separate domain. And of course, with a separate pen or maybe a black pen, you guys can mark here, most of the Sinhala population comes, puts up, and they follow a particular religion, that's Buddhism. So you're going to write Buddhism right here, you're going to talk about Sinhala. So it's pretty clear looking at the view of the answer that you guys know about Northeastern Territory, you guys know about the Sinhala people, you know about their dominant position, and then you guys can probably cover all the important points. For example, recognition, I'm going to underline it for you guys, recognition of Tamil as the official language. So very first is you're going to underline. See, when I say underline your answer, that does not mean you're going to pick up a pencil and start putting lines or start drawing everything, underlining everything. You're not going to highlight everything. That's not going to help you. So the best practice is please underline the important catchphrases. For example, in this case, Tamil as an official language, and they wanted a regional autonomy or an authority. Second, they wanted an equality of opportunity and wanted to secure their educational rights and rights related to their jobs. So that because of which they had a protest, because they wanted to put forward their claims. So they sort of had a protest, they had a civil war, they organized, by 1980, it was the peak time when these guys, they all came together. It's like till one time, there's a minute when you can put forward your demand, you can ask respectfully from the other person if they're going to respect to what you're asking for. So if your brother or sister probably has something that you want to take it from them, you probably put forward your demand, right? Second clause is you're going to go to your parents and start complaining that okay, he, she did this, that, and now I want my stuff back. The third important way is you're going to revolt it all by yourself. So the third was taken over, the third case or the third situation was taken in hand by all the Tamil people, because they had it, they really had it. They've been asking for it patiently, but now it was like the peak time that they were expecting the rights and to be recognized by the government. So what happened by 1980s, several political organizations, they came up and they formed a very important organization, that is LTTE. So they wanted to ensure that their rights, their claims are respected by the people, and because of this there was a civil conflict, there was a lot of loss of life and a lot of casualty happened. So you can see in this case that the people of posh communities, they were killed. That caused a terrible setback. So whenever there's a war, there's a terrible setback. Even if you and your brother start fighting, so what's going to be the end result? It's like everybody in the house is going to get upset because of that. So yes, you have described the three demands that were put forward by Tamils. Jobs, you're going to explain the jobs point. Second, regional autonomy, you're going to explain that various political parties were set up, and then you're going to talk about it. Third important point, they wanted a separate region for themselves, and then you're going to talk about this entire stuff. So this is what the answer is all about. So you have to make sure that you probably draw a map to explain the situation, and then you move on with the answer. Your map, just a little map, is going to add cherry on the cake, and it's going to fetch you more marks. Okay, so what is majoritarianism? So I know what is coming across your mind. Majoritarianism is something that your brother or your elder sister, holding power would every time use against you. So how has it increased their feelings of alienation among Sri Lankan Tamils? Explain with examples. So this is the question, divided into three sets. So they've asked for a question and they've divided into three sets because they are expecting you to answer it in three different sets. That does not mean that you're going to provide a mixture of Italian, Indian cuisines, and I would say Chinese together, all together. You're going to place it right on the table, pulling everything together. Don't do that. They have clearly mentioned it. They want it in answer. They want the answer separately, and we're going to provide it. So what is majoritarianism? So I am explaining majoritarianism. First, you're going to give the definition that you guys have right here, and it's coming across your mind like anything, that it is a concept which signifies a belief that that the majority community should be able to rule the country in whichever way it wants. So in this style, they disregard the feelings of the minority. Like I told you, your brother or sister using power against you is all about majoritarianism. So now I'm going to answer the second question, that is, how has it increased the feelings of alienation among Sri Lankan Tamils? Now, if it's a question, of course, again, I'm going to draw a very small map of India in a box, and I'm going to talk that yes, this is Sri Lanka, and here is where they've been demanding their autonomous region, that's northeast Sri Lanka. Now, what has led to this? What are the reasons? Like how? They are asking you how. Do you get it? We just write the answer for the heck of it. It's not the case, guys. The question clearly states that they're asking you how did it crop up. Like they've been living together for years, but what made them feel that, you know, they are not belonging to this territory, they not belong to this country, and they feel alienated for that matter. So the very first point that you're going to start with is that the series of measures that have been taken by Sinhalas have probably advocated a feeling of that sort into the Sri Lankan Tamils. The very first point in this is 3 points I'm going to give you. The very first point is that the government has followed policies related to preferential treatment. They've given, they've allotted government jobs to their own people, that is the Sinhala people. They've kept reservation in education system only for their own people. And second point that you're going to talk about is, before you start or explain this point, please make sure that here you put a very important mark and you show it there that you're going to talk about this act. In 1956 Act, what did they do? They declared their own language, that is Sinhala, as their official language. And the third important point, they also came up with a new constitution that advocates that, okay, only and only rights belonging to the people of, or maybe following this religion of Buddhism, their rights would be secured and others would be excluded. So imagine a special package coming out from Burger King, Domino's, or someone like that, that okay, we're gonna, you know, just people above 18 are gonna get 50% off. Right? Everybody below the age of 18 years is going to feel alienated anyway. They're not going to like this policy. So this is what happened. This is the very first practice of Domino's that's going to go against the market, right? People are not going to like it. So similarly, what the government did, because of which the Tamil people, they sort of felt alienated, that we are not being respected for who we are and we want our rights. So these are 3 points I'm going to summarize for you. The very first is the official language. Second is preference given to the people in jobs, in education. And third, a new constitution. And then you're going to talk about the preference given to their own people. So this is how you guys going to make a difference to your answer and present it to your teacher. Okay, so on that note, let's get started with the next important question. How have Belgium and Sri Lanka dealt with the question of power sharing differently? Now, if I read this question twice, or if I invest my time, a minute or so, in reading the question for like 2 times and then coming up with the answer, I would probably feel the essence. I would probably come to know, okay, they're talking separately about Belgium and they want a separate answer for Sri Lanka. They don't want a khichdi made out of it, right? Nobody's going to like that khichdi. So how you're going to answer or attempt this question is that yes, differences had probably cropped up in both the countries. May it be Belgium, may it be Sri Lanka. They've been facing different or difficult situation, but the way they dealt with it was also quite different. So in spite of being democratic countries, they have had issues related to power sharing. So this is going to be the introduction. Before you get started with the answer, you have to give a very, very, very good introduction that yes, in spite of the fact that they were democratic, they had issues related to power sharing. So first I'm going to talk about clearly segregated in this case. First I'm going to talk about in this case is power sharing related to Belgium. So yes, in Belgium, I'm going to talk that yes, the leaders were, reasonably very smart too, and they addressed the problem very smartly. They, protected the feelings and interest of different communities by coming up with a proposal that an arrangement where they're going to share the power with the local authorities or people in minority. But whereas contradictory to this statement, what I've made right here, I have written that Sri Lanka shows a different story. So they've asked me about Belgium, they've asked me about Sri Lanka. I've clearly stated, given a good introduction, then I've talked about Belgium, then I've talked about Sri Lanka. So there's no point anyway I'm going to give any offensive answer for that matter. It's all clear out here that yes, we have different set of stories, we've mentioned it differently, and now we can secure good marks. Okay, so let's get started with the third question, with the next question for that matter. Explain any two reasons as to why power sharing is desirable. Okay, I know the two reasons that's going to come up to your mind is, you're going to talk about moral reason, you're going to talk about the prudential reasons. These are the basic two reasons. So imagine a person is presenting the answer, writing those two reasons in the form of a good paragraph, a very good writing and all, and writing that in a form of a paragraph. Right? So the teacher would probably invest a lot of time getting points, segregating points related to the moral reasons, segregating points related to the prudential reasons, and then allocating marks to you. So we're gonna make their life really easy. So in this case, what I can do is I can give a very, very interesting introduction that power sharing is desirable for various reasons. We need power sharing anyway. So the two sets of reasons why we are talking about power sharing is, the very first one, underline guys, please underline it. So very first is the prudential reason, and the second reason that I'm going to talk is moral reasons. So two reasons, first is prudential and the second one is going to be the moral reason. So in this case, I have drawn a very small block diagram in which I have written prudential reason, I have drawn moral reason, so that it becomes pretty clear to the teacher, yes, I'm going to highlight those important stuff. So I have picked up prudential reason, I have retained all the important points related to prudential. For example, if you can't relate to prudential reason, the easy way that I probably prefer to go around is P is for prudential and P starts for profit and loss. So whenever you're looking that there's not going to be any conflict, whenever you have to adjust, so that's all about profit and loss, adjusting the profit, compensating on the loss side. So P is prudential, P is profit. So whenever I talk about prudential, so it's like to resolve the conflict. If you're going to resolve the conflict, you're going to ensure that there's going to be stability. And also, in order to, if there's going to be stability, anyway, it's going to help in national unity and integrity of the, to define the integrity of the country. So that is related to the prudential reason. But please ensure when you're providing the points, you are supposed to use bullet pointers or maybe put it across numbers. But in this case, I have preferred to use the numbering. I would probably go in this way. Similarly, second, I am going to start, I have talked about prudential reason. Now from here I am going to start for the moral reasons. So it becomes pretty clear to your teacher that you've segregated the answer. A person who has not segregated the answer would not score marks. It's like something that goes against you, that's not going to work in your favor. But however, if you've segregated the points, if you've made sure that yes, you have content available or relevant facts related to prudential or maybe moral reasons, you can write a good answer. And towards the end, you can of course make sure that you conclude your answer. And how you're going to do this is that in this way, it's said that both sets of reasons, they signify the importance of power sharing in the form of community government, may it be the reserve constituencies, and decentralization of power becomes very, very, very important. So both together play a very important role when it comes to power sharing and stability in the country. So that's the whole point. Let's jump on to the next question and let's see. Okay, now coming to the crux of the chapter, they are asking and it's a very important question and can be expected, what are the different forms of power sharing in modern democracies? Explain with example of each of these. clearly mentioned that you're going to give a good example for each case that you're going to talk about. So we basically have 4 basic sets of power sharing. First, I'm going to talk about horizontal power sharing, then I'm going to talk about the vertical power sharing. So in horizontal distribution, see, you guys know that power can be shared into basic sets. You can divide it in horizontal, vertical, then among different social groups, and finally power shared among different political parties. These are the 4 basic points. Now I'm going to reveal one thing right here, that whatever stuff you guys have learned is not going to help you anyway. Like, you might have been cramming this chapter for years, like for an year I would say, but that's not going to help you score marks, right? The only point that's going to help you score marks, or probably write a good answer, is the pointers. So I know that power can be shared in 4 different ways, as I kick-started my answer with. So that's what gonna help you. So first you're gonna tell that yes, give a good introduction. Power sharing is really desirable in a country to have a stability and integration in the members of the country. So the very first division that I'm going to talk about here is horizontal distribution. I'm going to give you relevant stuff related to that. Second, I'm going to talk about vertical distribution of power sharing, and then I'm going to talk about the 2 cases, because this is a very long answer question, can be expected in 5 marks. So whenever you're talking about vertical distribution of powers, you can address or compare the case of India with the countries that they've talked about. For example, you can compare India and Belgium, because in that case you have 3 levels of government. So guys, please underline the important stuff. For example, in this case, horizontal power distribution, you're going to underline legislative, executive and judiciary. In vertical distribution, you're going to underline the union government, or you can call it the federal government, and of course the regional or state level government. So you've clearly mentioned that yes, this is, or maybe you guys can probably use a black pen to highlight that you're going to talk about the horizontal distribution of power, and then prefer to underline the 3 organs of the state. Similarly, you can use a black pen to start your answer and talk about vertical distribution of power, and then define that yes, you have your union government and then you have state level government. Let's jump on to the 3rd important set, that is power sharing. You're going to use a black pen. Power sharing among different social group. So when I say social group, something that you guys can underline and get the teacher's attention is going to be religious and linguistic groups. So 4th point is going to be power sharing among political parties. So in this you can say that political parties may be in the form of coalition government. They have to share their power in coalition. They can share their power among different pressure groups to ensure that the government is functioning the right way. So this is how you're going to attempt the body part, and last part you're going to conclude it this way, that the 4 important factors, that's horizontal, vertical and power sharing among social groups or maybe political parties, they help to ensure that there is stability in the country and the interest of minorities are also protected. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you guys. Let's jump on to the next question. So the next question is state 1. They've asked state 1 prudential reason. The second part of the question is, and 1 moral reason for power sharing with an example from Indian context. Okay, so of course you'll be starting with the definition of power sharing. Then you're going to talk about the prudential reason. For example, I have segregated the prudential reason of power sharing, and then I have segregated the moral reason of power sharing. See guys, we make a lot of khichdi in our paper, which is not going to help you, which is not going to help you score good marks. So in this case, what you guys can do is segregate, because they've used the word and, they've used a connector for that matter, and you guys have to ensure when something of that sort comes your way, you have to respect that. and you have to answer accordingly in that case. So the prudential reason for power sharing is a precautionary measure. As I told you, it's going to take care of profit and loss. You are not supposed to use the statement profit and loss, but yes, you can state that it is a very precautionary measure that has been taken. Precaution has been taken to ensure there's no conflict, to ensure there's stability. If there's stability, there's automatically going to be national integrity. And if I talk about moral reason, yes, it is the very spirit of democracy. Like, what is moral? It's like in the spirit. And people have a right to be consulted. So you are sharing the power with the people, with the local representatives, and they have every right to get involved in the functioning of the government. And of course, decentralization of the powers in India is the best example of moral reasons of power sharing. What decentralization basically means is that you're going to share the power at the grassroots level. May it be rural bodies, may it be urban bodies, you're going to do that. Besides the segregation that has been clearly made in the constitution for division in 3 lists, like union list, state list and concurrent list, this moral reason ensures that even the people at the grassroots level get involved in the proper functioning of the country. So here I conclude this question on the note that yes, you're going to give an important introduction, then you're going to segregate points related to prudential reason and moral reason, and then you're going to give a good example associated with it. For example, in this case, prudential reason, I have talked about the constituencies has been made or reserved for minorities, for women, so that there is equitable distribution of power. Nobody feels alienated, nobody feels left out. But when you talk about moral, that's the very spirit. So in this case, you guys probably know what you need to underline here. In this case, it's the very spirit of democracy that you guys gonna underline. And in this case, you're gonna reduce the possibility of conflict. So you have clearly mentioned with a black pen that you're going to talk about prudential reason. Then with a black pen, you're going to talk about moral reason. And then you have highlighted the important point. So that's going to make you score, help you score really well. Okay, so on that note, let's kick start with this next important question from this chapter is, after reading this chapter, 3 students sort of drew different conclusions. Which of these do you agree with and why? Right? So you have to give your reason in about 50 words. So what Thomson thought is power sharing is necessary only in societies which have religious, linguistic or ethnic division. Mathaya sort of thought that power sharing is suitable only for big countries that have regional divisions. And third important one, every society needs some form of power sharing, even if it is small or does not have small division. Now, I'm going to give each one of you like a minute to think which statement do you want to go for, or which statement do you guys support, and then what are going to be the associated pointers with it. So, okay, let's jump on to the answer. Okay, so the last statement made by this person is, you're gonna give your statement that I agree with the statement that there is going to be power sharing and it reduces the possibility of conflicts and helps to strengthen the unity, upholds the spirit of democracy. So even if there's no need, right, you can probably share some sort of power at the local level, at the grassroots level, so that those people living down there, they feel empowered, they feel that they're not left out, they feel that they have been given some power in the functioning of the government, or maybe they feel that yes, we are a part of the country and they don't revolt against the government in any case. So everybody is important in a democracy, everyone has a voice, everybody has a right to shape the political or maybe the public policies. Therefore power sharing is not only necessary in societies that have division, clear demarcation or division for that matter, may it be in the form of minorities, linguistic, religious or whatever, but it is also necessary to be there in every type of society. Okay, so that was the answer to this question. Jumping on to the next question, it is the mayor. There's a situation given to you. So just like I told you, social studies is not about cramming. It's about, high order thinking skills. They're gonna ask you about check your analytical knowledge. They're gonna check how you're gonna evaluate. They're going to check your understanding. So in the previous case also we got to know that yes, it was not cramming that's going to help you. It's like getting on to the very essence of the chapter, that yes, you have the feel, you can probably understand that if you are not given that set of power in your own home or at your own place by your parents, and the elder one or the younger brother sibling is getting all the power, is getting all the attention, how would you feel? So that is the essence of power sharing. That is the crux that you have to summarize in this chapter. So the question is, the mayor of Merchentum, a town that's near Brussels in Belgium, has defended a ban on speaking French in the town schools. He said that the ban would help all non-Dutch speakers integrate in the Flemish town. Do you think that is a measure? Do you think that this measure is in keeping with the spirit of Belgium's power sharing? Give your answer in about 50 words. So they want to evaluate your knowledge, they want to evaluate your skills in this case, like what have you understood. If you've not read the chapter, you're not going to talk about the Flemish town, you're not going to talk about the non-Dutch speaking people. You don't know where is Brussels, where is Belgium, which is the capital and which is the country. So let's get started with the answer. Now, I don't think you have to, they have clearly asked that you have to give yes or no. So do you think this measure is keeping with the spirit? Either yes or no. So you make a statement that no, in this case, no way. So in this case, I don't think that the measure is going to keep with the spirit of Belgium's power sharing. Why? Because Belgium leaders, they have way back, they've recognized that if there is any regional diversity or maybe cultural diversity that's existing, their rights have to be recognized, have to be given to them. So by banning a particular language for that matter, there is not going to be harmony among the different sets of people. Rather, it's going to turn them rebellious. There's going to be a civil strife, undermining the entire setup that they've set up, entire structure that they've come up over the years, and it's going to distort that setup. So yes, either yes or no, and you have to support your answer that why do you think so. So here is the justification that the Belgium leaders, they have recognized the existence of regional differences is what is going to fetch you marks. That you yes appreciate that they have recognized the existence, there is some sort of existence of regional diversity, and you have to respect that. You have to address it in a particular manner. Alright, so that's all for this session about power sharing. I hope you guys have enjoyed and got something out of it. So thank you on that note. So you guys can download the PDF link by downloading this app. The description is provided, the link is going to be provided in the description box down below. So if you download this and you subscribe, so what you're going to do get is you can ask doubts, you guys can get access to all the videos that's going to come up next, and also you guys can have free access to the study material. So on that note, thank you so much for attending the session, and till we meet next, take care, stay healthy, bye bye.